All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine Women of Words. I'm Michelle, and you may notice that Diana is not here. She has rudely abandoned me for a road trip to Washington so she can go to her sister's wedding. I mean, I don't understand why she couldn't just take me with her, but it's all right because we have a wonderful guest and an awesome co-host. The guest this evening is Megan Frampton. I got it right. Good job. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Megan. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And our co-host this evening is my neighbor, Vanessa.
Hi, guys.
I have shipped the kids off to her house for a half hour. And we may just make this, extend this once the interview is over. And just say, oh, we ran late.
Yeah.
So weird.
Wine to drink. Who knew?
Yeah.
So before we kick off, what is everyone drinking? Well, I know what you're drinking. But
Yeah.
Megan, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Fred from Slovakia.
Ooh.
Yes.
Easy.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I actually haven't had it yet.
It's a moment of truth.
Pretty darn good.
And so full disclosure, guys, I haven't ordered my wink wine yet. I'm terrible. But I do have all my bottles picked out and I'm ordering it tonight. But in the meantime, we are finishing off our rosé from our Halloween sleepover last weekend.
It's very good.
For those of you who don't know, we both have two small kids. We didn't just have a sleepover by ourselves.
But it was for them, kind of for us too.
If you do want to check out some of the wines that Wink has that Diane and I love talking about, please go to the link is trywink.com/www podcast, and you'll get $22 off of your first box.
Yay.
So now we're going to dive into our interview. But before we get to the book, which sounds wonderfully delicious, I just have to say that I love your bio on your website.
Oh,
I think, and guys, if you haven't gone to her website yet to check out her books, you definitely should, and read her bio, because I'm just going to read part of it because I think it's awesome. Megan Frampton writes historical fiction romance under her own name and romantic women's fiction as Megan Caldwell. This is the best part, this sentence right here. She likes the color black, gin, dark-haired British men, and huge earrings. Not in that order.
That is awesome.
And first of all, who doesn't love dark-haired British men?
nobody.
Nobody in their right mind.
Yeah.
But of all the things that I hate writing, I love writing, but of all the things I've written, I hate bios. I feel like they're so awkward. Like, I don't know what to write to make myself sound awesome. So how many versions of the bio did you go through before deciding on that?
Well, honestly, I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And I toss stuff off because when I think about things I'd like to know about people, it's not so much where they were born and raised and, where they went to college or anything, but I want to know about what makes them them. So I guess that's where that came from. I had a longer one that was on Goodreads that talked about, when my parents' TV broke. So I only had the choice of reading books and blah, 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 but that's kind of dull. So I just, shorten it all up and
It is very interesting.
yeah.
And I see the big earrings are in play this evening.
See, I knew I had to wear them because I knew that, I do have some small ones, but I do really like big earrings. Yeah.
I just tonight, my son got a hold of my earrings and he didn't know really what they were. So I put them on to show him and he goes, I like these.
Oh.
I'm like, no, that's not how they work. They're attached.
Yikes. That's not good.
So now romance and historical romance, which I'm really interested in. I don't think I've ever read a historical romance book.
Mm-hmm.
But they're two genres that we haven't dug into yet very much on Wine Women Words, but I think that's going to change now. How did you initially get into writing those genres?
Well, so when I was about, so here we're going to go way back into the bio boredom. When I was about 10 years old, I started reading Barbara Cartland, and she was, I mean, I'm 1,000 years old. So she was, that was back in the 70s. And she was actually related to the royal family and wrote these ridiculous romances that I read at 10 and 11 and spent all my allowance on and loved them. And they were set in the Regency period. And they were really, they had a lot of ellipses. So the girls would talk like this. And I can't even now with them. But, and then that led me into other stuff. My parents are both really well read. We had a big library. And my mom read some romance, and mostly, I think mostly historical. Fast forward to college when historical romance got honestly kind of rapey. And so I stopped reading it, and I was an English major anyway. So, you know, I don't read that crap. But I've always really, really liked historical things. So I read Jane Eyre and Pride and Prejudice without thinking, oh, these are romances. I just really liked them, and I watched the movies and, you know, swooned over Heathcliff, even though sociopath. And I've just always really been attracted to history and a time different from my own. And then I had another career before this, but I got laid off after 9/11 from my company that was doing business in downtown New York. And I was going to stay home with my kid. And I thought, I'm going to go insane if I don't do something. So I started writing. And I thought, why not try writing a romance? Because I had just gotten back into it. When you're breastfeeding, you only have one hand. So I could
one of those days.
Yeah, right. So you can only hold mass market paperbacks, right? And it was so I started reading genre fiction, mysteries, and returning to historical romance. And then that was it. I know it's a circuitous way to get there, but yeah, I really love history. So I guess that's a very long answer to, hey, hi.
You know, he really enjoyed your answer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He never whines. He never barks. He's a husky.
Yeah.
So
oh, cutie.
I'm used to him talking to me, but he's like pacing the house. I'm like, really? Right in the middle of my interview? But I really, you know, when you think, I feel like there are a lot of stereotypes almost about romance novels.
Oh, yeah.
Which kind of goes back to what you said when you kind of like, oh, I don't read that. Like, that's not what I read. Yeah. And what's something that you've kind of learned just from writing and being immersed in that genre that you think people should know?
Well, I think that every book is about a relationship. Romances are about a love relationship, but every book, like, so I read outside of romance fiction too. I read fantasy and some mystery and science fiction. It's always about, I mean, if you don't care what the character cares about and their relationship to something, whether it's finding the truth or being a loner like Jack Reacher or James Bond, right? I mean, romance is just about a relationship that happens to be between people. And it depends how many people you have, depending on the kind of romance you write. But I always think that there's a whole lot of commonality with genre fiction, not necessarily with literary fiction, because that's a different kind of character development and everything. But genre fiction always has some sort of striving purpose to it, some sort of relationship that the characters really care about. So romance just happens to be about love and a love relationship. And what is also interesting about romance and about other genre fiction is that we've got parameters set up. So it's even harder to make that writing interesting. you know, reading, one of my books, that there's going to be an I love you at the end. How I get there is the fun part. And so if it's actually so constrained that you know what's going to happen at the end, but you're still reading breathlessly, that takes a lot of skill, I think. And that's something that people don't understand about romance, is that we're writing within a box, but we have to make the box like super amazing. And like, oh my God, I can't wait to get to the bottom of this or whatever. So it's a great genre. It just happens to be something that women like to read generally. And so it's not as well regarded.
So in this case, for romance novels, even though the ending is predictable in a sense, because you know that they're going to end up together or someone's going to end up together.
Yeah.
Predictability can be a strength because it forces you to make the how more creative.
Yeah. I mean, there have been so many, and I've been reading romances now for a very long time since I've returned to the genre. So many times in the course of reading a book, I'll be like, oh my God, I don't know how they're going to do it. Seriously, Megan, reading a romance novel, you know it's going to end up okay. But I still have those moments of doubt because the authors are so skilled at bringing me along for the journey and raising the stakes higher and higher and higher. Well, just like you're like, oh my God, I don't even know who committed this murder, right? In a mystery. Or how are they going to find the golden chalice in some fantasy or something? Right. It's all the similar stuff, and it's just on the way to getting it. It's really fascinating.
So
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
I'm Diana. Vanessa is going to take the next question. I'm going to let the dog out so he stops driving me.
Yeah.
Okay, so The Duke's Daughter, that's a part of a 5-book series, is that right, with the different sisters?
Yeah, it's actually going to be 4 books and a novella.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm writing a novella, sort of, now. It's going to be a Christmas novella, because one of the sisters,
fun.
Yeah, I just couldn't figure out what her deal was, this last sister. So I decided to make a shorter one. But yeah, The Duke's Daughters, I thought of Pride and Prejudice and the 5 Bennet sisters. And I thought, what would happen if Lydia actually wasn't rescued by Mr. Darcy and everything, and the whole family was ruined? What would all the rest of the girls, what would the rest of the women have to do to be able to survive and stay within society? So it's kind of loosely based on that.
So is that where you got the idea, was kind of off of Pride and Prejudice?
Yeah, because I thought, I think a lot of authors are kind of like, what if this happened instead of this? And so it was just, what if Lydia was still off and ruined? And so the 4th book in the series is actually the ruined Lydia daughter, her story, when she returns to London, all ruined, as you do.
Same.
Yeah. So that's
And then, so I admit I have not read the book yet, but I think I have to, because it sounds like there's a love triangle, obviously.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So in the first 2 books, the hero of this book, the Lady is Daring, almost got married to the heroines of the first 2 books, the first 2 sisters. In the first book, yeah, I know. It was so poor dude, right? I mean, he actually didn't want to marry either one of those sisters, but he certainly didn't think he was going to marry this sister. But he was supposed to marry the next eldest daughter after the one that ran away. But she ended up falling for his brother. And then in the second book, the heroine of that book believes she's totally in love with this guy Bennett. See, I named him Bennett after Bennett's sister.
Oh, it makes sense.
And he's not at all in love with her. And so he's kind of trying to like bring her down easy, but then he has a best friend, and that happens. So kind of a love triangle, but not quite, because these 2 head off. She hijacks a carriage and she doesn't know he's in it. She goes to find her sister, the ruined one. she wants to know what happened to her sister because her sister is like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Don't come looking for me. So she's like, well, screw that. I'm going to run after her. And he's in the carriage. So
I feel like how many times do people really go, okay, if someone leaves a note or says, don't come after me, I'm okay. How often are you just going to be like, she said she's fine?
Yeah, it's fine. Well, yeah, so never. I mean, of course, not in our books because we have to have everybody tied up and matched up because God forbid we have an unhappy heroine out there who doesn't have her own mate and, there's some sort of thread left undone. So yeah, and it took 3 books to get there to go find the sister. And the sister actually never did marry the guy that she ran off with, but she has a child. It's totally scandalous for this time period. Like nobody would acknowledge her, and she'd be totally cast out and everything. So the stakes are really high in this situation. The same way it is in Pride and Prejudice, where they're basically like, oh, great, our whole family is going to be tainted by this one person's action. It was seriously that high drama, and people would be totally terrible if you happen to have somebody who's kind of, loose screw or whatever. So, yeah.
God forbid someone run off and.
I know. You can't have that. Can't fall in love.
Nope.
Gotta marry who you're supposed to marry.
I mean, unless you're lucky enough to fall in love with the person you're supposed to marry, but
that'd be nice.
But that's a really boring romance. Oh, I love you. I love you too. Page 5.
The end.
Happily ever after.
Yeah.
So, and it also sounds like there are. My husband just walked in, and he's not used to seeing Vanessa here for our episodes. He does not want to come inside. It also sounds like all 5 of the sisters are, in their own way, can't do that when we're doing an interview. It sounds like, sorry about that. It sounds like all 5 sisters, like in their own way, are independent and almost modern. You can relate to them reading them in the 21st century. But you also have to make them believable to that time period. So how do you work on creating those characters? You have to take him into another room. Thank you. How do you work on creating those characters that you can relate to, but still readers are like, she would never do that in.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely gotten people, my writing style, my books are very modern. And so I definitely have gotten people saying, oh no, there's no way that a heroine would do that back then. But my response to that is people are wacky no matter what time period they're in. And if they have a particular stubborn streak, or they have any kind of personality difference that takes them out of the norm, they're going to do some weird things. I definitely know that sometimes my heroines are too modern and my heroes are too modern because, and I think in a good way, because they're not racist, homophobic, misogynist, right? Or they're not like, oh, I'm just going to sit at home and wait for my prince to come. They're going to go out and find their goddamn prince, my heroine.
I like that.
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to balance that, but I also feel as though, when you read Pride and Prejudice, for example, you don't think, oh, I would never do that. You think, oh yes, I would totally do that. It might be put in a different way, or, you might be at a rave instead of at a ball at Netherfield, but it's all the same stuff. There's all the personality dynamics and characters and people falling in love or not falling in love. And it's all the same no matter what time period you're in. So that's my approach to it. And I try to kind of inhabit the creatures as I write. I mean, it's really fun to watch when I'm like, oh, she frowned. And then I'm like, so I suddenly become the characters. but that's one of the things that I think is important, is that, yes, things have changed, but they haven't changed so much that the characters and the people are unrecognizable. I don't know if I really answered your question. I kind of talked a lot, but.
So that's why we have wine. No, you know, it is true, though, if you think about it. You know, even though I just asked that question, it almost is the same as, you know, teenagers telling us that we couldn't possibly understand what they're going through, when it's like, well, we went through the same thing. We just different technology.
Right. They're spilling out their guts on, you know, Facebook message groups and I guess Snapchat and stuff. And we were, you know, sitting by the landline, at least I was, with the phone with the cord and everything.
Oh, wow.
It was very dynamic, right? So yeah, exactly. I have a 19-year-old, so I know what you're talking about.
I have a 4-year-old who thinks she's 19. So I'm not looking forward to that.
No.
Yeah.
I have a 6-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter, and my son's in 1st grade. And it is funny because like a lot of the things he talks about takes me back to when I was in school. It's really not that different, you know, the same issues go on, and you know, so it is still kind of the same.
Yeah, relationships and stuff. Yeah.
So even though technically there is no love triangle, what do you have, like a secret to writing like the perfect love triangle with equal parts drama and?
Have I written one? Is that what you're asking?
Sure. Do you go into a love triangle knowing like who they're going to end up with, or is it a surprise to you?
I'm so bad at making decisions that I don't think I can. Yeah, I don't think I've ever written a love triangle the way I've had heroes and then people that are sort of just not the heroes, that kind of been that the hero think, oh, is he a rival? But the heroine is always kind of no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like making my character suffer too much about like, which one shall I choose? So, you know, she's usually got a beacon on him, even if he has doubts. So, yeah.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
So when you started writing these books, did you have like all 5 kind of planned out, or was it you kind of started with one sister and then you ended up with the other sisters?
Yeah. I had all 4 of the sisters because the other one was, you know. I had them all on the page in the first book, but I didn't really know them. But then they suddenly started to come to life as I was writing. And then when it came time to write the next ones, I kind of knew, which is what I was saying before. The one of the sisters, her story hasn't really come to me, so I'm just writing her a holiday novella where it's like she gets stuck in London, like Home Alone. She's stuck in a London townhouse, and there's a convenient, grumpy guy next door. But yeah, so I didn't really plan it out at all. And I'm what's called a pantser. I don't know if anybody's talked about what the pantsers or plotters. We have this vernacular where we either write by the seat of our pants, making us pantsers, or we plot everything out. And I'm a pantser. Although the series that I just started writing now, a brand new series, I actually did plot out a series arc, which I've never done before, which is weird because I'm like, oh, I know what happens. That's kind of weird. But it's still, stuff still pops up that I didn't know when I'm writing, which sounds like kind of woo-woo, but it actually just happens where you're just writing like, oh, that's nifty. So,
Interesting.
No, I get that because I'm a pantser as well. And I hit a wall with the book that I'm working on, and I thought, you know, maybe I just need to plot it out. Maybe that's my problem, is I don't know where I'm going, so I don't know how to write to get there. And it felt so weird that I did like the index cards and I, you know, mapped everything out. I'm like, this feels very strange to me.
Yeah, I tried when I started writing. I tried all that stuff. I actually, when my kid was little, I had like little animals and stuff, and so I'd set them up and kind of try to act out a scene. But nothing worked. All that worked was me sitting in front of the computer, starting to write and listening to the voices. Now, with this new series, I just have little touch points. I don't have the whole thing mapped out or anything, but it's a lot more plotted than it ever was before, and I think it'll be better, but it's also kind of weird. Yeah. I mean, you can't make your brain do what it doesn't want to do. If it doesn't want to look at index cards and, give you some sort of writing epiphany, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, no, I'm like that on deadline days. I'm a freelance journalist, and there are more stare at the computer going, the words need to come out. They're not coming.
Yeah, that's journalism. My dad was a journalist and would spend hours on the lead, and then the rest would just be like that. You know, hours, like agonize. He didn't know how I wrote, and I didn't know how he wrote. So it was cool. Yeah. But yeah.
How long did it take you to write your first book?
I think it took a couple years, because I started writing with no clue about I didn't even have paragraphs. I just wrote in one long block. But I kept reading and I kept meeting people. The romance community is amazing in terms of its helpfulness. So I was meeting people that were huge authors that were willing and able to take a look at my stuff and give me feedback, and I entered a couple contests. So it probably took about 2 years of writing it and then scrapping the whole thing and writing it again and again. Now it takes me about 5 to 6 months to write a book. I write about 2 books a year. So, but, that's taken a long time to get to where I'm at speedy.
Right.
Well, you also have to learn your process and learn your characters. Getting to know characters takes a while too.
It does. Yeah. This book, actually, this one that we're talking about now, I wrote the whole thing, and normally I don't get a lot of revisions back from my editor. This time I got a lot of revisions. I was not in a good space, I think, when I wrote this book. And so it was really dour. My heroine was kind of a bummer. So I scrapped the entire first half of the book and rewrote it, which has never happened to me before. But I think obviously it's a stronger book because my editor accepted it and didn't say this sucks. But it also taught me a lot about the process too. So I was actually happy that happened, because it hadn't happened to me yet. And I'm like, am I magical? Oh no, not at all. So, but then the next book I just turned in, she loved again, which is great. So I definitely learned from this process. No writing is wasted writing, I think.
And of course, any good romance novel worth its salt has some incredibly steamy sex scenes. So yes. How do you work on your sex scenes when you get to those points? My husband's laughing at me in the other room. Don't judge.
Yeah, no judging. So my sex scenes are the easiest for me to write. Like when I start hitting that part, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I think it's because there's so much character exposition through the sex scene. And I'm also very concerned with, if that makes it sound like I'm worried. But one thing that I like to play with a lot is control and choice and agency, especially with women in this time period. So in my books, the heroine always kisses the hero first because he's in such a vastly higher position than she is, that if he kissed her, she couldn't really say no. So when she kisses him, then things happen. And so for writing the sex scenes, it just kind of, it's like a wave. We'll be in the carriage, and then, things happen, and then there we go. It's the same as my other writing. It's just easier because I can spend pages on how things feel and what's happening and how confused they are and how they can't think and how they're thinking too much and all that stuff. So, yeah.
I've never tried writing a sex scene. I would probably be like bright red going, I can't write this. I can't do it.
It's, yeah, but it's like any other thing. Plus also, it's not like I'm like stripping naked and doing it myself, but
Right.
I'm not acting it out, I promise. But yeah, it's just once you push through it, it's, every single word choice now is going to sound terrible. It's really fun, and if a sex scene isn't worth writing if you don't then emerge from it having learned something new about the character or have the character learn something new about themselves. So that's like any scene. It just happens to be that there's fewer items of clothing, more swapping of spit, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we do our hour, but I'm the only one who has read the first few chapters on this show currently, so I could have a conversation with myself. That's not very much fun. But thank you so much for joining us, Megan. We had so much fun chatting with you.
And thank you, Vanessa, for jumping in and
Yeah, of course. It was fun. Very nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you guys.
So everyone, our book this month is Undiscovered Country by Kelly O'Connor McNeese. It's about, if you haven't checked out our Instagram website, it's all over the place, but it is about the love story between Eleanor Roosevelt and a reporter named Lorena Hickok, but everyone called her Hick. And I've read about 3 chapters. I'm going to do a quick summary, quick discussion. About 3 chapters, and the story is based on a collection of letters that Lorena Hick donated to the Franklin Roosevelt Library before she died. And if you guys haven't started reading it, please grab a copy. Start reading it because you will not be disappointed. I'm 3 chapters in, and it's amazing. Not only is it like you can already feel like the tension, like you said, you're building up to a sex scene. I don't know if there's going to be a sex scene in this book, but you're building up to the romance, and there's the connection there, and you can already feel the tension, and it's awesome. But it's a reporter. I'm a reporter, so like connecting to this character, it's awesome. But Diana might be back. We're not sure yet if she'll be back next week, but I will definitely be here next week. So everyone start reading. And thank you again, Megan. We had an awesome time with you.
Thank you both so much.
Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.